Good morning.
Bonjour, bonjour, ça va venir?
Okay, is everybody here yet?
Je suis pas technicien, moi.
Non, mais c'est...
Tu m'as dit de pluie toucher, donc j'ai touché.
Il y a des tornades la nuit ici, tu vois.
Ah, là, vous m'entendez, je pense.
Okay, you can hear me now. That's a lot better. Very good. So before starting, and whilst we've got the music with us, I think it will be the last time that we are going to hear Ulrike with the piano. So perhaps we can give her a round of applause to say thank you. Also, just to remind you that you will need your headsets if you don't understand French and English, and I think we could also say thank you to the team that are at the back there.
Ils font un gros boulot.
They're working very, very hard. And if they weren't there, then there wouldn't be anyone to translate for you, and you wouldn't be able to hear anything that goes on. So thank you very much to this team. So it's the third day. I think that given the time, I'm not going to spend 10 minutes talking about nonsense. That would be for another time. So this morning, after Antoine the first day and Pierre yesterday, we are now going to change languages. I don't know if Lisa is going to speak in Ukrainian or in English. So Lisa Yasko, she's not just a member of the Ukrainian parliament, but she wants to talk because of what cool means to her. She's going to speak to you this morning. So I will now give the floor to her.
I'm happy to be here, yes. Thank you very much. Well, I need a clicker for my presentation. First, we need to be set technically. Okay, so good morning. I hope all of you already had very meaningful days here in Caux, and you're also reflecting on what is the role of Caux for you this year. I'm glad that I was invited to Caux. It's my 5th time here, and as I was asked to talk about some inspiration, I want to share of how Caux impacted my life and what do I want Caux to help me in the future after this time. So first, I came across to Caux initiative, I think in 2014. Just very after Euromaidan, I met some people from IofC network who were in Kiev, and I've learned about absolutely inspiring stories about peace building, reconciliation, and I felt like, okay, this is the place where I really want to come, but unfortunately the first year didn't work out. But for the second one, it was a program called Caux Scholars, Caux Artist. Caux Scholar was in another year, and that was a year where I came to Caux, and you know, in all my studies, in all my activities, I was always involved in something political, something connected to the society, civil society, but I also believed in arts, and arts was always a part of me, but in some way I always had a struggle between me on where should I be more, in arts or in politics. And I always was answering that definitely politics, because politics has more tools to make an impact. But music and art is something that helps you to speak up, to be true to yourself, and to find your inner music inside you. And this is exactly what I found when I was a co-artist program. And you can see me there and playing the piano. And, you know, for someone like me who comes from the creative family, but in fact, all her students, and not only student life, was involved in a civil society and never really had time for using my voice in arts. It was very, very important for me, because it felt like I finally became fully alive, because art gives you these opportunities. And on the next year, like if you go a little bit into my biography, so at that year I was already working in the presidential administration of Ukraine, involved in governmental communication, without, of course, days off, without vacations, without anything. And it was all about talking to the world, working with the foreign journalists to spread the message about Ukraine, and we already had a war at that time. And becoming a scholar for me was an experience that I really wanted to have for very strange reasons, in fact. I felt that I have a strange connection to the time. I felt that I'm all the time living in the future or in the past, but not so much in the present. And for me, co-scholar program, almost, in fact, 1 month dive into trust building, reconciliation, transitional justice stories, and finding your own story with your own conflicts in your life was incredibly, I would say, refreshing. And if someone would ask me if I'm a happy person, I would tell you that after 2016, and it was really the moment of Caux when I understood that I'm a happy person, because I'm connected to my purpose, I know what I want, and I live in the present time. And the second reason I wanted to become a co-scholar was that I was always feeling that I have some wings, that I can fly, but I never could really fly. And Caux gave me a spirit of flying with my dreams and purposes that I keep holding until today. And I think it's very important experience. After this, I was a co-organizer dialogue on land and security, and it was the time was I already preparing myself into a real politics. You see the photo on the left, it's Sven and me also performing here, and we performed yesterday the song that we wrote at that time. I think that it was a good moment for me to get the right energy for a new path, and I'm glad that Caux was just before I became an MP. And when I reflect about what Caux is for me now, I also want to ask you, maybe you can write your own notes on what Caux is for you this time, on a spiritual level, but maybe also on a professional level. Maybe you have your own personal goals. Because when I arrived here a few days ago, I actually was feeling, okay, I don't have such a request from myself, like bringing my wings back or living in the present time. But for obvious reasons, of course, I go through very hard time in my country, in my position, personally, professionally. And it's very hard to keep finding some positive moments because there are too much pain and too much dramas. And I decided that I want to put my goals, my priorities for this time in Caux as to recharge, to breathe, and reset things for positivity and purpose. And of course, Caux Palace and the mountains and the nature can help with this. And very unexpected, I actually was reflecting here, what I want to share, and for some reason, something came to my mind that I don't really share publicly, is that in my spare time, I design jewelry. And this is something that started to be quite important for me recently, because in my professional life, in a political life, it's all about the global goals. You vote for the laws to change the lives of many people, but sometimes you lack something to hold in your hands that will bring you some positivity. And for me, there are 3 things that I really want to keep going with after Caux that I already started, and I decided that at this stage today I want actually to make a kind of statement about this, because one of the things I'm really dreaming about is to create educational scholarships. I'm a founder of one NGO called Yellow Blue Strategy. It's of course connected and devoted to Ukraine, and I believe that we need scholarships now for Ukrainian children and for Ukrainian people who want to pursue educational activities with creativity, for bringing positive emotions for future for our children. And I'm very happy that through my music and with the help of Sven, recently we actually had a music event in one of the universities where we managed to fundraise a bit, and I really hope that it will be just the start and I will keep doing it. So this is an idea about yellow-blue educational grants. The second one is actually Yellow-Blue Freedom Nights. This is the thing that when I became an MP, I also was involved in creating some music projects for showing Ukraine diversity. I'm sure that sometimes we lack understanding and a dialogue in general as a society because we don't know each other's cultures. And I was very happy to discover how much music diversity we have in Ukraine. And we started I produced even TV programs about this for the national television. And now I feel that I want to do it with music again, because I believe that sometimes with the song and with the music, you actually can help people more in Ukraine than with a political speech. And this is a very strange thing for me to say. But I think I really want to keep doing it for something positive and for social impact. And the third one is very unexpected. You see me designing jewelry that is devoted to freedom. And you see some of the items that I designed myself, and I think that could be a great tool for also bringing with your hands some sense of support, of freedom and bravery to many people around the world. And I'm saying this, first of all, to myself, because I was many times undermined and saying that this is not something important. But I actually think that it's about freedom and it's very important. Here are just some more photos. I think if we have different tools we can use to keep going with our purpose, we should do it. And I think Caux is about this place of resetting dreams and thinking what are the things you maybe didn't do, you were scared of, but maybe it's the time to rethink and do them. So this is my story that I decided to share, and I hope you also reflect on your own. Thank you.
Merci, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So now we are going to go on to the plenary session. It will be in French and in English. So if you need interpreters, please take the headset.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's plenary. I am Nirmala Pillai, and I'm the moderator for today's session. The topic today is reigniting faith in democracy. This is an IofC conference. So obviously, at the heart of IofC conference are the values or standards that we also think is essential to cultivating the skills to live in a democratic society. So trust and integrity in democracy is part of what IofC does. And one of the most important skills is how to learn to disagree well, because poor disagreement inevitably degenerates into violence. So we have a rare opportunity today to engage with 3 speakers from different parts of the world, from Africa, from Chad and Tunisia, and from Ukraine. They are all of them involved in democracies, the building of democracies in their own country and dealing with the challenges. So the first one would be Mr. Gali Ngozi. Can I invite you up to the stage, please? He is a Minister of State and Secretary to the Presidency of the Republic of Chad. Then Hela Ben Youssef. She's a long involvement in politics in her own country and is the Vice President of her party, the Social Democratic Party, and advisor to the Ministry of Women, Family, Children, and Seniors. Lisa Yasko, that you just heard from, is a serving MP in the Servant of the People Party in the Ukrainian Parliament. And as she said to me when we were talking over breakfast, I have many facets to me, and you saw some of those facets this morning. So I'm going to ask Mr. Gali to speak first, followed by Hela, and then Lisa. When the speakers have spoken, we'll take a moment to reflect, and then I'll ask you to please discuss and reflect on what you've heard for a few minutes. Then we can engage with the speakers with questions. So, Mr. Gali, please.
Bonjour tous.
Good morning, everybody.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Good morning, everybody. I am very pleased to be here to talk to you about my country. It's the very first time that we are talking about my country, and I'm here to talk to you about the situation of democracy in Chad. My country is surrounded by Libya, Nigeria, Niger, and Sudan. There is no access to the sea. It really is a country in the heart, surrounded by other countries. There are a number of communities that prosper differently. Chad found independence, but then we had the Civil War. For about 50 years now, we have been living under a dictatorship. There has been military powers, and our history is a succession of military powers. As a penseur chinois said, we are struggling In 2021, in April, the last president of Chad went to fight against the rebels and he was killed. He died. So the officers and the generals are now doing what they call a military, they have a military constitution to help us transition. The last president was in power for more than 30 years. So it was these officers that decided to create a transition period. This transition period, the first comes in 2 stages. The first stage has just finished, and the second stage is to have a inclusive national dialogue where I am the president of this. I am organising these discussions with more than 100,000 participants. We are including women, we are including young people, children, and many different people from different religions. This has taken us about 3 months so far. The national dialogue is trying to build back our country. We are trying to take recommendations and solutions from other people and trying to talk with our national government so that we can apply these solutions and recommendations. As the Minister of State, I am now the Secretary General for the Presidency of the Republic of Chad. So, dialogue has affected 2 things which are very important in my eyes. Chad needs to build back upon democracy. After all of the wars, they didn't really govern our country with democracy. We weren't allowed to talk about the idea of freedom or human rights. Our last president left more than 30,000 people dead, and he died in Senegal. I already had been to Caux quite a few times at this point.
So I was asked to be a witness at his trial in Senegal, and that's because I came to Caux several times. I didn't feel the anger to do that. I didn't think it was right to witness against this former president. And my wife and daughter joined me here, and so I was part of a thinking group, Nathalie and Séverine, and they are right here in the room. Please stand up. Nathalie and her husband were the people who restored my psychological and spiritual life, and they gave me back trust to take part in the Caux conferences with a lot of conviction. If I managed to lead the dialogue in Chad, even though I was sick, it was because I had a conviction, a deep conviction to rebuild peace and to give Chadians a chance to have a democracy. And so the dialogue came to the conclusion that we would need to have a constitutional order again. So we have two principles we want to work on. So we need a constitutional order again. We need to adopt a constitution. And after adopting a constitution, the Chad people should be able to elect their president. And that way we restart our democratic process. Secondly, we need to make reforms, but these reforms have to abide by the Constitution. We all know here that the Constitution is at the base of our society, and it's at the base of the lives of women and men in a country. And it sets down the powers, the links between the powers, and how to access power, positions of power, and also how the responsible political responsibles will account for their actions. And so thanks to that, we can achieve a calmer situation and a life, a more peaceful and organized life. My country hopes to get out of the turmoil of the years of war in order that it's been through, in order to enter an era of choice, of tolerance, of not using weapons any kind of weapons. Yesterday we were at the restaurant and the Secretary of State, Mrs. Alenge, she said that in Chad everything is violent. And even within a family, a mother, when she speaks to her child, has to raise her hand and threaten her child. So when we live in a situation of war, it's not easy. Like violence can be everywhere. And I would like to seize this opportunity to remind a few things. First of all, the issue of democracy is at the heart of our exchanges, and we try to develop our country. Secondly, we need to enable everyone to take part in the process. In order to take part in the life of the public life, which by which I mean the country, the town, the neighborhood. Whatever the participation, whether it's direct or indirect representative, it's a way of organizing a culture or society. But what matters is that the population takes part in the process and makes the decisions themselves. And we've noticed the decline of democracy and how it is costly for our harmonious lives and collective lives. I've stopped crying, and I would like Chad will be a country of peace, and would be different from what I've known so far as an opponent. I've been fighting for more than 50 years against dictatorship. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll just take 1 minute before we get the next speaker up. That was a very speech from the heart. And just take 1 minute.
Bonjour.
Good morning, dear friends. Good morning, dear community. First of all, I would like to dwell upon this testimony from Mr. Gallier. You're a shining example of courage, and we can draw much more confidence, each of us in our country, especially if we lost faith in democracy. Things evolve in the world, and unfortunately, more and more, we are faced more and more with wars and famines, and when we try to understand what's going on and what's the root to this, well, it's basically selfishness, personal interests, and the absence of love for the other. And your name is Ghali, and in Arabic it means valuable. And I hope that for you, for Chad, for Africa, you will achieve a stability, and because we are all interconnected and we're not alone in this world. And this is what I hope for for Ukraine, Palestine, Yemen, and many other countries in this world. We are all gathered here today in order to share one ambition, that is to offer a space of dialogue in order to think about the current challenges and to try and rebuild confidence in democracy. I've written my speech at least 3 times. Well, our discussions that we had during the last few days, well, enriched me and gave me food for thought and made me feel like telling you first of all how I define trust first of all, and then give you the example of my life as a student when I started a few decades ago, my student life. Well, I hope this picture will give you some inspiration just as much as it does for me, because for me this is what trust is. It is really hard to give your trust to someone. Once you trust someone, either you gain a trustworthy person for life, or you get a life lesson. When you give your trust to someone, there are 2 benefits: soit a trustworthy person for life, or a life lesson. Democracy is a governance system that relies on citizen participation and so on. At 18, a young woman left Tunisia to go to France, and France has become her second motherland. And my life didn't prepare me to necessarily to become a human rights activist or a female political activist. I think today we might cry a little bit. When she left her country, it was hard, but she learned a lot through this life experience. She learned self-confidence, and she also learned to trust people with more or less success. And in 2019, I realized that trust is something that is that we can believe in, and there are people that you can trust, people that are fleetingly here in your life and people that stay on in your life. I will tell you a story. In 2019, after taking part in elections, running elections, in order to represent Tunisians that live abroad, I was at the head of a list. Back then, my party wasn't the most voted for party. Nevertheless, I had the enough faith in order to stand for this party. And I thought that us as Tunisians living abroad, we could bring back something to the motherland, to Tunisia. And I was surprised to see that the people that helped me during my campaign, there were activists from my party, but also some of my friends, also people who resigned from the party, but still supported me. And there were people that supported other parties and that stand up for me. And they supported me because my choices were right, they were transparent. And I was trying to reach out to different categories of people within our society. And this is why I had even more trust in those people, in those friends, in those activists, because there were people that wanted to change things, and they knew that through work, through transparency, through honesty towards oneself and honesty towards the other. Of course, I made mistakes. I didn't know how to talk about one topic, for example, as you would like initially, but still I had the responsibility, the trust, and the accountability towards those people. Let's move on to the next slide. As I said, so democracy relies on the participation of citizens, on individual freedom, liberties, and on equality of rights. Unfortunately, those principles are not necessarily respected. And this is the case in every government, it seems, whether it's a right-wing government, a left-wing government, a far-right or far-left one. And yesterday, one of our panelists was saying that democracy was a skeleton, and today the skeleton is sick. But there is still the possibility of healing, and there's still a way that we can take towards a better day, a better dawn. And so there's no democracy without rights and freedoms. We live at a time where the vision of democracy is extremely poor, and we have a feeling of betrayal by the representatives. And we feel deception towards the efficiency of the state action. And there's a gap between the language used and what happens on the ground. I would like to move on to populism that we can notice in the Philippines, in Turkey, in Hungary, in Venezuela, and the United States with the rise of Donald Trump, but also in Brazil and also in Tunisia. In Tunisia, a president was elected in free elections with more than 75% of the votes. It is true that he is honest, that he has clean hands, and that he is a great lawyer, but still we cannot talk about democracy if all powers sit in one hand. When a parliament is not free to speak up, to say no to a law, I think that things will change, and I still trust the country and its leaders to change, and I still keep hope, because hope helps you keep on taking actions and also gaining the trust of the people, the citizens, of women and men in our countries. Today, I'm talking and I've forbidden myself from running any elections, be it in either my countries, either in Tunisia, where I have my roots, or France, where I grew up and I had my 2 children. I chose today this painting because art and culture are part of the idea of trust, of love for the other, and it helps you exchange with others and to understand others. And this painting is by Zuneib Turki, a Tunisian painter, and it shows the return of Habib Bourguiba, the former Tunisian president, after the declaration of independence. On this balcony, you can see all social categories. There are the aristocrats, the bourgeoisie, members of the bourgeoisie, farmers. It shows how a country can be united for democracy, for independence, to build a country on humane values, on values of a equal society, and the values of love, which unfortunately love has lost its former meaning. So democracy is not just about passively recording people's wills. It's about giving a new value to the aspiration of people and to work on tolerance and living together in spite of or because of our differences, because those differences enable us to know each other better and to grow together. And it should be built on debate and deliberation, because in order to trust democracy, I mean, we need to trust democracy and talk about it around us. Each of us has their own job in their own country, and if we give back trust in democracy, well, we will achieve a very valuable success. We will be able to live together in peace and tolerance. So we have to think of how to reshape democracy and not give up on the fundamental values of democracy. And the electoral processes, the traditional processes such as referendum, elections, etc., are challenged today, even though it can work just like in Switzerland. And we have the challenge of the artificial intelligence, and we need to make laws regarding that. In order to develop this trust in democracy, we need a more active participation of the citizens. We need a participatory democracy, and we need a local democracy because that's the closest level to the people, to the citizen. Civil society is really important nowadays, but also women and young people. And I would like to call on them, on women and young people, in order to spread this message. And we need to protect our democratic process by ensuring an independent justice. And we also need to develop education and teach them the past, the history of our countries, and to talk to them about the people who fought for our countries. We need to ensure fundamental rights for everyone. And
we need to have equal work, equal jobs for people. We need to reignite the economy. I would like to thank my colleague and welcome my colleague who's going to speak to us next. And I think that she's going to give us a lot more trust to make the right progress. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. You know, I'm glad that we are talking about freedom and the price that we have to pay for that freedom. I'm very grateful to our first speaker from Chad, who spoke about how difficult it is to resist against dictatorship, how difficult it is actually to dream about democracy and freedom when it continues like this. I'm also grateful to our second speaker, who spoke about that trust in democracy and how it's hard to keep going when actually it's not working, and there are so many complexities. And in the presentation on the slide, you see me at the barricades of Euromaidan. I belong to a generation of independent Ukrainians who were raised in independent Ukraine and who actually already went at least through 2 revolutions for freedom and for Europe. I think it's very special because you don't find so many countries in the world who will be fighting for that freedom and will not give up. And when people ask me why I believe in Ukraine, probably one of my first answers would be that because we love freedom, because we are very democratic, and the second one would be that, one second, that Ukraine is a country of unique opportunities. This is the country that you don't see it that well, but in the middle, you see Ukrainian farmers who continue doing their farming while being under the bomb from the Russian aggression. They're not afraid. Ukraine is a country of people who were stopping Russian tanks without actually having weapon. And you can see there's a real picture on the left of people just going on the streets against these tanks and just stopping this because they have the opinion, they know the value of freedom, and they don't want that aggression to change their lives. Ukraine is a country of unique opportunities of hardworking people and education who are very much into digitalization. And this is something that I always am very proud to share, because I'm sure that if we look at the experiences that even are in a very developed European countries as Germany, France, or Switzerland, you will see that Ukraine has much more digitalization in the state services. I can do almost everything on my phone. I have my passports on my phone. I can submit my declarations. I can pay a tax on my phone. I can do all of this, while in other countries, unfortunately, there is not so much progress. You see me here on this photo, and you definitely have heard many more stories of Ukrainians. And, you know, I think that none of us is special in our love for freedom. And when I represent Ukraine abroad, for me, it's very important to say that I'm just one of millions of Ukrainian men and women, children, people who value freedom, and who are fighting every day for their life, for their right to live in freedom. And this is incredibly terrible price that we pay every time. And I want you to imagine that we all are democracy, we are free, we have our problems, but we're a happy society. And then suddenly, you hear one night this sound. And you open your eyes, and it's 24th of February. It's the day that have changed the lives of all of us. This is the day that meant full-scale aggression against our freedom. And that was the day when we all wake up and without waiting for someone to tell us what to do, most of us were already enrolling to territorial defense units to protect our freedom. Most of us were taking care of our children, and most of us were not waiting for anything. Some were trying to evacuate their families, but all of them were thinking about only one thing, that we have to protect our freedom. For me, the beginning of the war is a very painful topic, because for me, I have 3 dates when the war began. The one is 24th of February, another one is 9 years ago, when Donbass and Crimea were occupied, and Crimea was annexed. And it was also something that is incredibly painful for me. It's the 1st of October 2021. You see on this picture my partner, the father of my child, the person with whom we shared lots of love, partnership in every possible way. A former president of Georgia, Ukrainian citizen. We lived as a happy family together. We have age difference, but we were, I think, we were very good couple together when he was in freedom, because we had the same values about freedom, about democracy, and he was sharing that experience not only to me but all Ukraine on how to resist Putin. I want to remind you that the war started and the aggression of Russia started in many ways in 2008 when Russia started a war in Georgia and occupied Georgia. So on the 1st of October 2021, he was on his way to Georgia from Ukraine because he believed that Georgia is going away from the path of freedom, and he needs to help his people to stand up for freedom. And he was arrested. And since that time, he was poisoned a number of times. He went through many types of humiliation. I was there every week visiting Georgian prisons. Also went through many physical and psychological humiliation myself. And at the time I was also pregnant, which was even harder. And when I talk about the price of freedom, I'm thinking about it very personally and also very politically. Because from what I just shared with you, you can see how much we all suffer from the fact that our freedom is not protected and that we have to protect it. We need to have the tools for it. And I'm, in fact, now raising my child alone because my child has never seen her father. The father is in a very bad health condition. Georgian authorities are very much into supporting Russia now. Mikhail Saakashvili doesn't have any access to the telephones, to the internet. His isolated reality became very different. Only his mom is allowed to visit him. And I know a lot of things that were happening also around that story that were showing very difficult world of politics and that democracy. It's very hard to find trust there when I know how much betrayal is there. And for me, having so many, in fact, roles in my life, because I also have a political role in my country. I'm a member of Zelensky Party. I'm a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. But also feeling that my personal life was absolutely affected by geopolitical and terrible aggression from Russia, when everything that was so close and important for my heart became a tool for public to target, to kill me. And I can tell you that it's very hard, but I still believe that the only way to proceed to the future is through freedom. And I know that when I'm talking about myself, I'm talking about thousands of Ukrainian women now, thousands of Ukrainian parents who are, no matter what, they know what to do to protect the future of our children and freedom. And this is something that I was always sure that in my generation will be the ones who will finally solve all the problems of corruption, of other things, and we will live in the society we want to live. But there are also third factors that we cannot control. And I really hope that maybe in my generation, we'll make sure that there are protections of that freedom. And when I say why you should support Ukraine, I say it because it's not only about Ukraine. I'm sure if you want to live together with your families in freedom, if you don't want to have a situation when some of your loved ones are imprisoned or killed for their fight for freedom, you should stand and protect that freedom with every possible means. You know, I had so many absolutely heartbreaking moments of people from Africa, Latin America, and other countries coming to say the words of support because they say, we are watching Ukraine and your fight for freedom, and we know if you succeed with this, it will give us also more hope. We live in a world that is very much interdependent. If the grain from Ukraine doesn't come to Africa, there'll be more hunger in this world. So for me, it's very important to keep the energy up no matter what, to fight for this freedom. And if there is anything that you in this audience can do on your level to help us in Ukraine or in other countries to protect that freedom, I think you should do it. Whether it's something like sanctions, weapons, something for recovery of Ukraine, or in fact, supporting children, supporting education, creating more opportunities for education. I think this is something that brings life to the future of freedom, that definitely shouldn't be taken for granted. And I really want you to remember that it requires an investment in freedom every day. It's never enough, and we live in a world that shows many gaps in international law, in all that democracy protection institutions. We need much more of that would be systematic and would be very strong. And I'm very honored that, unfortunately, with a very high price, that I'm here today to say that millions of Ukrainians are here to help that fight for freedom in the world, not only in Ukraine. Thank you.
Friends, we've heard from 3 speakers who spoke from their personal experiences and the challenges they face in their context. For the next 10 minutes, I would like you to discuss what you have heard with the neighbors sitting around the table with you and try and reflect on the main theme of this conference. It is, of this plenary session, it is reigniting faith in democracy. And then I will ask you to engage with the speakers and any questions you might have. But I would like to concentrate on that theme, please. So you have 10 minutes to talk to people around you and to reflect on what you've heard this morning. Bring your conversations to a close. Thank you, everybody. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I would like you to do now is please consider the conversations at your table, and if there's anything that jumped out from your table you would like to direct to the three speakers on stage, because as I said, this is a rare opportunity to ask questions of people who are mired in their context and trying to do the best where they are. So we've got a mic that's roaming around. So if you'd like to ask a question, please. Got a mic? Yeah, okay. And if you could say who you're directing the question to.
Okay, my name is Zach from Kenya, and my question is directed to the panel, but specifically to the Minister of State. My question is, we were having a discussion, and I remembered the sharing we got yesterday that democracy is a paradox that is not based on trust, but mistrust. And then I asked myself the question, what is the role of the opposition in making democracy, in reigniting trust and integrity in democracy? I ask this question because I think the mistrust in democracy is between the opposition and the government in place. And if these two functions are in place, the level of mistrust in opposition to the government, in my thinking, it's higher than it is from the government to the opposition. Then, if that is the case, how do we bridge that gap of mistrust so that we can be able to practice democracy with integrity?
Ce serait
It would be very pretentious of me to respond directly to the exact elements of your question. Between the opposition and those that are in power, there is one main person, and that is the population. It's the population that can make a difference. It is them who have the choice. It is them who have the right to say what they want. In Africa, we have this problem where there isn't much education, there is a lot of poverty, and the way that people can express themselves is very difficult, and the population don't always understand that. For more than 50 years now, nobody has been trying to talk to the population about their aspirations. Nobody has been responding to their hopes and dreams. There is a certain amount of choice between the opposition and those in power, but those who are from the general population don't have much choice. Without populism or the population, there would be no opposition. People are not listening to the hopes and wishes of the population. Africa won't be able to move forwards if we do not listen to the population. This could have very serious effects, and as I said earlier, that at every level of the community, whether it's villages, communes, cities, or smaller neighbourhoods, we must make sure that the population are participating in elections. We can really play our role as the opposition if the population are informed and if they can make their own decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci, Boniface Bassambombo.
Thank you, Boniface from Congo, from the DRC, living in Canada. What we listened to this morning was very empathetic. These speeches brought tears to the eyes of many people here. And this really spoke to us. Lise spoke about Ukraine and that how Caux is a place where we can achieve our dreams. We have got tools here that we can use. We have been able to search for strategies, and these strategies will one day help us to put an end to the wrongdoings in the world. We will be able to stop the sound of bombs. So let us think about education. Because all of these wars have always started because people are not educated. But we must also gather around a table to say that we are not going to incite war. Why are we not gathering around a table and making people put down their weapons? We need to educate the mass population. We need to educate our children. We need to teach them that violence is wrong. And this is going to be a very long road to take to reach this. But here at Caux, we are able to find the tools that we can use so that we can go back to our countries, and it can be like a snowball effect with the information and the knowledge that we gain here in Caux. I hope that we will be able to help every one of us, and that we will be able to transmit these values onto other people. We hope that one day we will no longer have war. And I would like to say that it is around tables when we discuss that we find ways that we can proceed without violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to turn that into a question and ask Hella, what are the skills you have to teach, reference to education, to help people adjust and live in a democratic society? Because it's not good enough to have the systems. We have to know when we're behaving in a democratic way or not behaving in a democratic way. We've got to learn, acquire the skills.
I would like to respond to this second reflection, which wasn't quite a question, but also I would like to talk about the other question that was asked. I would like to say that we are living in a paradox. Yes, we are. And that mistrust is an antagonist. We live in a world where there is less and less transparency, less and less honesty. And yesterday we spoke in the group and we talked about lobbyists and the fact that lobbyists on different levels are influencing the decisions of politicians. They are influencing the decisions of the media. And these are really the motors of what is happening today. They decide for other people what they are going to listen to, and this happens across the whole world. The Maslow's pyramid, when we think about this, an element of psychology, I think that we are forgetting something today. We have forgotten about COVID-19. We've forgotten about the impact that this had. I correct myself over the gender of COVID-19 in French. We've forgotten about how this allowed each and every one of us to see things again and to re-establish who we are and think about what are the values that we have and to think about what's actually important in our lives. A lot of people changed their lives and they converted elements that they weren't happy with. People feel like they have been alone in their pain and that the state is failing. And I think this has changed also the way in which we have reflected. At the same time, I would like to tell you that we are not seeing democracy how we want to. History is eternal rebirth. We are in a phase that other people have already lived through or that other people are going to live through. Our experiences are not all the same. So I would like you to read a book that's called The New Barbarian of Europe. And I can tell you that I've read this about 3 times, because I understood that we have all lived through the same things but in a different way, and that it's really a cycle of life, and what we need to do is resist, just like our colleague from Cambodia did. He resisted, just like my colleague here from Chad has resisted. This is what we need to do. We need to have opposition. When we find that we are able to say no to the lobbyists and no to countries which unfortunately are taking advantage of the richness, we start to think about humans. The minister from Niger had some statistics and we spoke about this last night. And we can see that there is a difference. Why are there countries that are emerging easier than others and that their economy is starting to boom whilst there are others who are not, in finding that they're living in the same experience, whether it's across Europe, Africa, Asia. Nobody is in a unique situation. We are all complementary to each other. So the more we are honest, the more we are transparent, the more we try and live for strategies and visions which are clear, the more we try to stop lying to people. The citizen is an actor. He's not just a sheep who is going to follow others. This is how we will allow politicians to... This was how policies will be able to gain trust again. There is no magic wand, so there isn't a one-for-all solution, but there is a institutional framework that will allow people to speak up and say, no, we want to stop something. This is how we will allow justice to be served in countries.
Thank you very much, Hela. We'll take a question from another table.
Bonjour, je suis Carole Motet de la Suisse.
Good morning, I'm Carol. I'm from Switzerland. I would like to thank the panelists. I would like to ask you about the skills, the tools that would be useful to teach in our education, that our Canadian Congolese friend mentioned. Could you ask our panelists what are the skills and competencies that could be useful for rebuilding democracy and trust in democracy? The answer is not mine. It belongs to a lady that I don't see here. It's one of the oldest members of Caux, and she was telling me that she was telling a story about an African country where a woman was involved, and she accepted the position of a school head on a condition. I would like you to tell the story, maybe, because that experience is really significant. It says no to corruption and yes to democracy. I'm the lady who told you the story, and the lady who did that is right next to me. This lady, she's retired now, but she trained someone to take her role. She was at the head of a school in the middle of Kinshasa, who's had 1,000 students now, by fighting against corruption at all levels. And she taught her students and the teachers in her school. She doesn't really like talking about it herself. That's why I don't. Yeah, it's true. I don't really like talking about myself. I'd rather act. And my fight wasn't easy, especially in our conditions in Kinshasa. When I came back from my studies abroad, my husband and I, we thought one of the reasons why we wanted to go back because we were useless over there, whereas in our country we were needed. And so I got involved in politics, but I wasn't happy about the situation, because some of the values we were trying to abide by, the values I went back home for, weren't here. I was faced with corruption. Even the head of the school, the students, and the parents, the head of the school asked me to take on the management of the school. So I asked him to let me do it the way I wanted. And my way of doing things was to put myself in the service of the community. By living what would enable us to change the basis in order to see the fruit, the results later on. We cannot do politics, but where we are in the school, we could change things. And that's how we fought against corruption. First of all, when inspectors would come and check on us, in order for our students to succeed in their baccalaureate, they had all to succeed. And when the inspectors would come over, they would ask me, madam, we would like to check on your students, to follow up on them, to make sure that they succeed. But the follow-up was basically that they should give money to the inspectors And even without working, without studying, they would succeed. They would pass their exams. When I understood that, I decided not to do it. I said, no, I don't want to do. So I talked to the staff, and they weren't happy about it. And they were telling me, Madam, we cannot do that because we will lose students, we will lose our jobs. And the students themselves came to me and they asked me the same thing. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. The only thing we can do together is to come up with a new program in the modules that you don't know, and we would study those modules together, and I will pray for you, and you will see it will work out. And this is what we did. We put together a program, and the teachers took part in it, and in the end the students passed their exams. And there are a lot of situations, and some inspectors and members of the Ministry of Education, they were telling us we were obliged to buy certain books, and I was like, I told them no, we already have our program, our books, and I would say no to any of these pressures. Could you briefly talk about the education and the corruption of children? Every year in the school, there's I had a niece who lived with her daughter who was 6 years old, and I saw her with a lot of biscuits in her bag, and I told her, oh, sorry, it's your birthday, that's why you have that many biscuits. I'm sorry, I forgot. And she told me, why do you have all these biscuits in your bag? And she told me, the 6-year-old told me, I have all those biscuits to give them to my friends so that they would vote for me. And so it's in the culture, if you want to be elected, you have to give something, be it biscuits or money. And so I called in my staff and I told them, is that the right message to give our students, that you give something to get elected in order to join the Parliament of Students? And so I told them to all go back to classrooms and tell the students with the bags of biscuits to put them away and to stand up in front of their colleagues with a little program and tell them what they would like to do for their school and for the class. And so the idea is to stand up for the good of the school and not to hand out biscuits. And that's what I've been doing for all those years.
But ladies and gentlemen, we have on the stage a 33-year-old MP. And you heard her story. You heard this is a young lady full of music, full of culture. And yet she took it upon herself to become an MP. So I'm going to direct the question from the floor to you, Lisa, and to ask you to address what inspired you to become an MP, and what advice can you give to other people to get involved in politics?
Well, you know, in everything I said, I think there was one of the main messages is that I love freedom. And this is the reason why I felt that I should be involved in politics, because I want to make a change to bring more freedom, more opportunities to people. And I was working very hard to educate myself. I have 3 degrees. I lived abroad, was meeting different people, because I was always sure that I need to learn the best experiences for my country. But on the question, what actually are the skills, the first that came comes to my mind is actually you need to be able to rebel and not to be afraid of this. But it has to be very balanced. So if it needs to be a street protest one day, yes, it's absolutely fine. But of course, it should be more stages before that. And you know, I know that there is injustice, of course, in Ukraine as well. But I know from ordinary people that they may just go and, I don't know, for instance, we went talk with our Ukrainian women about this, about situation in the army and how young people are getting this list of enrollment. And sometimes there is chaos just because the country is in the war. So these women go and find that justice. They just go and do it. It doesn't happen first time, it's fine. Second also. I think that...
what advice would you give to young people who tend not to want to get involved in organized politics?
Well, I think the first thing is, in general, to believe in that empowerment of them and also in responsibility. And I would advise to be more concrete because, yes, freedom is incredibly important, but if you also can fight for something that you care about that is close to your heart, for instance, I don't know, for green energy, and this is a great way to, you know, you learn your professional skills, you become an expert, you can be an expert, you can advocate for that through different means. And I think I definitely advise education, but also like this balance is important because sometimes what I struggle with is that just because there are so many things we want to achieve, we don't see small results. But in fact, we do have many of them. And for young people, I think it's important to hear that all the victories have different steps. But education definitely is needed. And a political culture is very needed. Because if there are people, as you just said, that need biscuits, you know, to get the support, of course, there is something wrong, but you need to show them there are also other opportunities for that. And education and the stories from others can be very impactful, and arts actually can be impactful because arts could be a tool that can reach these people easier than a lecture at university, for instance, sometimes.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring this session to a close. We're at 11:15 now. I want to thank the three speakers for speaking from their hearts and speaking with absolute honesty about the situations they find themselves in. And what we heard was passion, we heard practical wisdom as well, and we've got a lot to take away. So thank you very much to our speakers again.
Brefs annonces pour
Okay, just a quick announcement for the rest of the day. At 11:30, there are going to be the community groups in the same places as usual, except for the group that is usually here in the Grand Hall. They are now going to be going in the room over there, which is called the Paquier Salon. It's just on the right when you come out of this hall, just on the right there. You will find it there, just before the lift. All of the others at the same time. And this afternoon you will have the opportunity to participate in 3 workshops. The first one, which is on the threats and difficulties of democracy in Africa. So welcome. This will be held here with translation. There will be another workshop on the leadership round table, which will be more about the theme of integrity and how we can take responsibility. And then the third one is going to be on the effect of artificial intelligence on democracy. At 2:30, you will see the places that you need to be in. You'll find it on the app as well. And then at 5 p.m. we have got the last session. Some of us had been asked if we could continue to have more sessions tomorrow, but I think that would be a bit too complicated to do. So our last session will be tonight at 5 p.m. and we will be able to talk about everything that we have discussed here. So have a good day and see you soon.